Hi guys, how you doing? I'm sorry that it took me so long to upload this video, and that's because I was toying with the idea that I probably shouldn't make a video about Casper the Friendly Ghost. Probably shouldn't do that because I might lose credibility. You might think I'm nuts, but everyone told me I have to tell this story. So when my book was first published in 1990, the pub date was February 1996. The book was the manuscript of the book was submitted in 1995, and shortly after that, the publisher asked me if I would go to the murder house, the Murder Inc. house, and take a photograph of it so that they could put it in the book, which I did and which they did. So it's in the book. You'll see a Ford station wagon parked in the driveway. So after I took the photograph of the house, I thought to myself, I gotta talk to these people. So I knocked on the door, and this Jewish guy in his 50s with a thick Jewish accent came to the door. And I said, "Hey, how you doing? My name is Kevin Marr, and I used to live here." And he just looked at me. Very matter-of-fact type of personality. Like the type of guy that, right off the bat, the type of guy that nothing would surprise him, you know? That type of guy. And I said, I used to live here in 1979. Hoping to get a reaction from the guy because of what happened in March of that year. And again, no reaction. So I'm thinking maybe he bought it way after. Now don't forget, I forgot to tell you. So now we're in 1995. The murders happened in March 1979. So there's quite a bit of time that went by between these two dates. So I'm thinking maybe this guy doesn't know what happened here, and but I'm going to tell him. So after I didn't get a reaction from the guy after telling him that I lived here in 1979, I said, "Do you know what happened here in this house in 1979? And he answered in a matter-of-fact way, yeah, I do." I said, "When did you buy the house?" And he told me, I think, like August of 1979. So my next question was, "Did you buy this house from Brian Molese?" And he said, yes, I did. Well, now I'm kind of shocked. And with that, he said, and I said something, I guess the look on my face said it all. Like, are you kidding me? And he went on to say, and I bought it from Brian List, and I got such a deal, $60,000. I got such a deal in a real thick Jewish accent. And who knows better than me, because I was brought up in part of the Bronx where there was a lot of Jewish people. So I know that. But it was the old school type of accent that you don't see today. That you don't hear today. So anyway, so I go to him, "Do you know who Brian Molese is?" And he said, I bought the house from him. And I said, "Well, do you know what happened here?" And he goes, "Yes." And having seen the crime scene photographs, I studied them for a whole day. The photographs, as well as the victim's clothing that was soaked in blood, especially the little boy's t-shirt. And I had a very hard time going into that house when I went there. I mean, I just now I'm starting to recuperate from it. the chills that he gave me, the eerie sense of what happened, it affected me. And I, as I said before, like to think of myself as somewhat of a tough guy. But when a 5-year-old boy gets decapitated and 2 women get mutilated sexually with a 14-inch serrated kitchen knife, there's nothing. When you look at those images, never mind being at the crime scene, it has stuck with me till this day. And we're talking about an event that took place 42 years ago. So, knowing what the floors, walls, and ceiling looked like in the dining room, in the living room, and the kitchen, I asked him, in what condition was the house in? He says, oh, it was terrible. There was blood all over the place. And he goes on to say, I tried to clean it off the walls. It wouldn't come. Then I bought a gallon of cheap paint, and I put it on. Looked like it covered it, but the second it dried, the blood came through the wall, came through the paint. And he repeated the process the second time. And he repeated the process the third time. With the same results. The blood just kept seeping through the walls. That's when it's time to get the hell out. That's when you leave. That's when you leave. And again, I want to emphasize that this is a regular guy talking to another guy, and every word this guy said rang true to me. He didn't seem like he was just like, on a matter of fact, he reminded me like Spock from the Enterprise. Like nothing shocks him, and he's just going to tell the story the way he saw it. So then he said, and back in New York, I don't know if they have it throughout the country or the world, they had a top brand paint back in New York was a paint called Benjamin Moore. And there was a paint who used to advertise, no matter what your walls look like, we guarantee our paint will cover with one coat. That was it. It was a little Dutch boy on a swing and with a little Dutch boy hat. And so he sprung for the good paint. And then he goes on to tell me that, yes, true to its advertising, I put one coat on and the blood went away. And I'm thinking to myself, no, the blood didn't go away. It's under the paint. The whole place is under the paint. Now, I didn't see the crime scene personally, but he did, and he cleaned it up. So I don't know what kind of person that takes, but so as then in 1995 when I talked to him, I got goosebumps. I don't know if you can see it. Just talking about it, some 25 years later, I get goosebumps about that story. And again, I didn't want to say this because I didn't want to lose credibility with people. Because my stories, 90% of my stories can be easily Googled or easily checked out from newspaper clippings and so on. Plus, I had 2 books written about me. So I asked him if it was okay to go upstairs. And he went ahead of me upstairs. And you could see the staircase in the last video. And that's the real staircase. I mean, it looks a little different now. There was no wall there before. And as I got halfway up, it started squeaking. And not like a creepy squeak. The kind of squeaks that they would use in a horror movie. That's what the squeak was. And now he's up at the top of the stairs, and I stop in the middle of the staircase, and I said, whoa. I said, do you ever feel thirsty in the middle of the night and have to come downstairs listening to this squeaky noise, knowing what happened here? Did it ever freak you out? And I start climbing the stair closer to him, and he goes, well, now that you mention it, yeah, something did happen. And I go, wow. So I get to the top of the staircase, and I said, well, what was it? Thinking he's going to tell me he saw what do you call it, an apparition or a shadow or a noise or a child, you know? Because I've heard that when children die, or when children get murdered, wherever they are, they could, I don't know. Again, I don't really believe in it, but I don't disbelieve in it, especially after hearing what he said happened. And again, I want to reiterate, I believe the guy. I'm looking at his eyes, I'm looking at his body language. I believe what this guy said was 100% true. Or I wouldn't have got the hairs being raised on the back of my neck and the goosebumps now. Again, with the goosebumps. I don't know what the fuck is the goosebumps shit. I hate goosebumps. I just hate them. And the more I tell this story, the more goosebumpier I get. Google that word. So he goes, after I cleaned up the crime scene, and that's what it was, he then began to collect the two women's clothing and belongings. And then he went to the little boy's room, got all his clothes, put them in a big black plastic garbage bag. And then he opened up the little boy's toy chest. And he started to put the toys in the bag. And then he picked up a mask of Casper, the friendly ghost. And he remembered, he said, I remember picking it up and looking at it and thinking, like 6 months earlier, this kid trick-or-treated with this costume. And he stared at it for a while, he held it in his hand, and he noticed that a piece of the plastic mask, it was one of those cheap plastic masks with the rubber band thing on the back. And he remembered that a piece of it was missing from the right side of the face. A piece of plastic of the mask. He took the mask and he put it in the bag. And he pulled out the gown, like pajamas, a white, he says it was a white jumpsuit that had a zipper on the back. And he remembered that it had a red candy stain on it, on the chest. Piece of the mask missing. Red spot on the costume. He puts that in the bag. Then he reaches in and he pulls out a pumpkin. One of those plastic pumpkins that the children use to collect their trick-or-treat goods. You know, a little handle on it. That's 3 parts of the costume. Then after gathering all the victims' belongings and property, he drove to Paramus, New Jersey from Fairlawn. And when I was just there, I Googled it. I hate Google. Like, nothing about Google I like. Google is too smart for its own good. I hate Google. But anyway, Google told me that it was 11 miles and 2 towns in between. Gave it. Didn't drop off the costume at a local Fairlawn Goodwill. No, he took it 11 miles away. So that's in August of 79. And then October 31st of 1979, I think at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun's still out, you can see everything. His doorbell rings. And he goes, okay, it's trick-or-treated, so he goes with his candy. He opens the door, and there stood Casper the Friendly Ghost. And he was shocked to see the costume. And then he looks closer, and he sees the piece missing from the face. Then he sees the red spot on the gown. And then the kid's hand extends with the pumpkin. So it was 100% that costume. And then he's shocked, he's stunned. Even Mr. Spock himself, like nothing. When he was recounting this event, he wasn't telling a story, he was reenacting an event. I could see it in his eyes. And he puts the candy in there. And the kid turns around and runs away and says, "Thanks, mister." Now, I'm not saying it was a ghost. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, how did that costume travel 11 miles to that door months after he donated it? So I then, for whatever reason, asked him, well, did it sound like a little boy or a girl? And he said, I couldn't tell. Well, I know they made a movie recently about Casper the Friendly Ghost. But as a child, I watched Casper the Friendly Ghost on TV as a cartoon. And if any of you older viewers remember watching that, you couldn't really tell whether Casper was a boy or a girl, right? If you think about it, and that's what he said. I said, was it a boy or was it a girl? And he said, I never thought about it, but I couldn't tell. So, believe it or not, that's a true story. It's one that's not in my book because my book was already, the manuscript was already written. I never, during any of my publicity tours or any of the television shows that I was on, I never mentioned that. But when I started mentioning it to people close to me, people that are helping me produce my YouTube channel and my videos, they all said that I had to tell the story, and I really didn't want to tell it. And that this early on, I didn't want to lose any credibility, But again, I'm not into paranormal things. But that really moved me. Now, the real reason that I got in my car, well, there was a couple of reasons. Well, why I got in my car from the West Coast and drove 6,000 miles round trip was to, A, talk to the people that lived there and see if any weird shit like that happened. But unfortunately and fortunately, that when I got there, the house was up for sale. I was able to get into it. That was like another problem. I was thinking, how am I going to talk to new owners of getting into their house and doing a little tour? Well, I don't have to worry about that. But what I am going to tell you guys is that once I find out that the house is sold and that the people have lived in it for a couple of months, I'm going to go back and I'm going to ask them just that for you guys. I'm going to go back and this time I'm going to go back with a YouTube channel, a book, and we're going to see how that plays out. Now, I wanted my channel to be different than other people's who have similar channels, but not quite like mine. That you were going to get a bunch of variety. Like I wasn't going to stick on one subject, but I can't tell my story without doing it chronologically. And what I didn't tell you guys is the reason I called 24 Sandford Road Murder House Incorporated. Because there wasn't only one murder plot that conspired there. Not one by one person, not by two persons, not by three persons, but four. There were four murderers, two hitmen, and an idiot, Ronald Schofield, that lived in that house, that planned murders in that house, 7 to be exact. And I was able to solve 4. The triple homicide at Fairlawn and another one in Manhattan. And there's so many parts of this story that are just unbelievable that I have to stick with the Murder House Incorporated for a while. Because we have a celebrity murderer that was a part of the conspiracy to kill the 2 women, not the boy, just the 2 women. And that man's name was He was the notorious Joseph Mad Dog Sullivan. And that sounds like a made-up name. That sounds like a movie name, Joseph Mad Dog Sullivan. Oh, no, but he was real, and you can Google him. I think he was charged with over 13 murders. A very bad guy, but a guy that had scruples. A guy that was contracted to murder Alice and her friend by Brian Molese. And when he showed up to do it, he saw little Hot Wheels in the driveway. And he stopped. And he goes back to Molese and he says, hey, wait a minute. I saw that there was a Hot Wheels. Is there a kid in that house? And Molese said, yeah, but he's not going to give you no trouble. Whack him too. And that enraged Mad Dog Sullivan. And you don't want to enrage him. He's like a no-joke guy. So I'm going to leave the story right there. And that's why I still got to finish. We're going to do the Schofield murders that came out of there. We're going to do Joseph Mad Dog Sullivan and Robert Eshard, who killed 3 people. A double homicide and a single. So that's what we're going to do. And I hope it doesn't bore you guys, but I'm sure that once you hear the story, you're going to understand how they're all connected. They're all connected. And me being a big mouth, I'm going to tell you this much. That once Joseph Mad Dog Sullivan was contracted to kill someone for insurance money, and that's what this was about, he expected to be paid. And since there was a kid in there was no way he was going to do it. And something really bad happened to Brian Molese, and I think it was 1981. So please stay tuned. I'm going to leave that like a little cliffhanger. And again, I apologize for taking so long to get back to you guys. And I hope you enjoyed the video. And I'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much. Peace out.